cool. Perfect.
And we have started.
Awesome. People coming in. Welcome, everybody. We're a couple minutes out here before we get going. Appreciate you guys turning up today. Why don't you go ahead and in the chat, let us know where you're from, what church you work at, and we're going to have some Q&A later, so feel free to jump onto that. But yeah, welcome. We're glad you're here. As we just get ready to go live here, with a lot of people joining. This is awesome. Perth, Western Australia? My goodness, what time is it there? My mother is in
There's your
Sydney.
people.
Sydney is 1 a.m. So it's late in Perth. But welcome. I was scheduled to be in Perth just before COVID, and then COVID kind of killed that trip. We have some terrific customers in Perth, and it's a great Australian city. We've got Jill from Gladewater, Texas. Greg, is that near you?
Nothing is very close in Texas, but they're still my people.
They are your people. Yeah. If I mean, some of you guys have met Greg, and some of you haven't. Greg is the most Texas person I've ever met, and I've met a lot of Texans, but nothing tops Greg Love, as he loves the state and bleeds Texas, red, white, and blue. Jackson, Mississippi, welcome. If you're just joining, why don't you go in the chat and let us know where you're from and your name, and we want to welcome you. Olympia, Washington, Hope Community Church.
And Dean, whenever you're ready, it's 8 a.m. so we can go ahead and get started.
Let's do it. Okay, well, welcome everybody. It's 8 o'clock. Want to get going on time here. Appreciate people taking the time. And we're going to have a terrific, hopefully very educational webinar today, all about background checks, protecting children, child safety, things that are extremely important for those of us that, work in churches as volunteers or staff. It's just become a critical thing. And so we'll tell you a little bit of the story. If you got questions, please go to the Q&A button, pop them in there. I got Haley on helping us out on Q&A, which is terrific. People are pouring in here, which is awesome. Gatlinburg, Benson, Arizona, Anderson, South Carolina, Cocolala, Idaho. I have no idea where that is, but Southside Community Church. Chris, welcome. We got Canadians here. Victory Lutheran Church. Welcome, Shannon. Great to have you guys here. So, all right, as people pile in, we're going to get cooking along here. Today really is the focus is about helping you understand what MinistrySafe does, what we do together. We are now joined at the hip. We're partners in life and ministry, working together, MinistrySafe and Tithely. We've been working on an integration over the last 6 months. So if you're a Breeze customer or you've been migrated into 3.0, what you're going to see today is already lit up for you, and you are ready to start signing up and taking background checks and doing training. If you're still on 2.0, you're part of the migration over the next couple of months, you'll see it built in to the 3.0 space, or you'll see in a minute we have a QR code and you go direct into MinistrySafe and get things started. So without any further ado, that's the introduction. We're gonna meet the experts. We're gonna talk about everything MinistrySafe. Everybody I'd love you to meet who's become a very close and personal friend of mine over the last few years. And I'm in his office a lot in Fort Worth. I want everyone to meet Greg Love. Greg, good to see you, buddy.
Thanks, man. It's good to see you too.
Yeah, this is awesome, man. You and your wife, Kim, founded MinistrySafe. Why don't we give a little history and a little background for a few minutes on how and why MinistrySafe exists?
Yeah, but when Kim and I were working in the early 90s, even as law partners and husband and wife, started doing work related to child sexual abuse, representing victims in circumstances in, child serving organizations where the wheels came off.
Right.
Now, in that circumstance, spending years immersed in sexual abuse standards of care, what the laws were, how this risk unfolds, started to realize this is just awful. Now, Kim and I are also in church leadership. I mean, I just finished 29 years in student ministry. So to see this risk unfold, to see the trauma and the way it wrecks the mission of an organization, tried to find out what can we do to take this information, this background check, this background, the resumes that we have, the experience, and start to move over into trying to prevent it. In other words, stop standing over train wrecks because we kept asking ourselves the questions, what could we have brought to this organization that could have kept this train from wrecking, that could
Right.
have kept all of this trauma from unfolding? So then began the adventure of trying to create the resource, trying to solve the problem so we didn't stand over that train wreck, especially for the church. So that's kind of the short answer of
Yep.
civil trial lawyers understanding a problem and trying to solve it.
And you've been building Ministry Safe for more than 20 years, you and Kim.
Actually, more than 30, but we
Wow.
used to do the same services out of the law firm, but then realized that we needed to create something that people could say that, yes, we're solving a problem, not because we have lawyers in our church,
Right.
but because we have these group of subject matter experts that understand the problem that are trying to help us prevent it. So Ministry Safe was born in probably 2005, but we've been doing the work for now 3 decades.
Wow. Phenomenal. So, you're hearing from experts today, guys, and that, when I fell in love with, you know, Kim and Greg, I guess 3 years ago, and we just kept visiting. We were at different conferences, and I was just really taken aback at the passion they have, A, for the church, which is obviously a big thing for us too, and B, for their passion to protect children and then basically get churches into a healthy place where we can get in front of some of the things. No one wants to talk about this, Greg. It's a terrible subject. But if we don't talk about it and you didn't provide these tools, we were just going to see more abuse and more children affected. So even though it seems unsavory in many respects, it's absolutely critical for you and your ministry and your church to take advantage of everything that Ministry Safe offers. Greg, maybe we're going to talk about two key things today. Background checks are one, training is the other. But let's go through this slide here and kind of break out a little bit more how Ministry Safe works and what it does on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, because when people say, how do you solve this problem? I mean, what we did is tried to answer that question from being in the ditch with the problem. In other
Right.
words, we've got to stand over 5 train wrecks a day is the
Hmm.
kind of calls that we're getting in through the law firm to try to help someone navigate a crisis. But see, the good news in that for the church, by the fact that we're doing that, is we get to see the patterns other people don't. And that's the good news, actually, in this difficult topic. If it has a pattern, Dean, it's predictable. And if
Right.
it's predictable, it's preventable. The
Hmm.
challenge is it's not intuitive. So, in that train wreck experience and asking and answering the question, what should have been in place here? Not just any one single thing, but a combination of things that truly raise the barriers to be able to provide prevention. And that starts fundamentally with the training, which we're going to talk about today. And that's one of the things being pulled into these ecosystems, training your people to have the eyes to see the grooming process of the preferential offender. And I don't want to chase that bunny. I want to finish going through this system, but training is foundational and fundamental. You could be doing everything else in this 5 part, but without the training, none of it has life. You're
Hmm.
going to need to have a background check that's appropriate. You're going to need to also do additional screening. There's your application reference checks and interviews designed to elicit high risk indicators about the preferential offender. Of course, your skillful screening is what I just referred to, but also tailored policies and procedures. Not just this one size fits all that says sexual abuse is not appropriate, but truly policies that are written down, rooted in that grooming process, and designed to be a glove that fits the hand of the particular ministry. And then finally, systems for monitoring and oversight is just a snappy lawyer way of saying, How do we make those elements sustainable? And that's where technology is key. And that's when you and I started to connect.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Let's just unpack a couple of these things a little bit more. Like when I started learning about what you did, and we started, and immediately I think, oh, the background checks make total sense, but not all background checks are equal. I came to find out. Maybe could you just talk around a little bit how the background checks from MinistrySafe work? And there's 50 states with 50 different laws, and I know you guys have navigated through all of that, but just let's dig a little deeper into background checks, and how and what makes MinistrySafe so highly kind of skilled in this area of child protection.
Yeah, when you get up to 30,000 feet, when you ask me how long have we been doing this work, the answer is 30 years. But the
Hmm.
background check work only for about 13. And the reason being is, again, we're standing over train wrecks, and we were seeing organizations even 10, 15 years ago that were doing background checks, but still wound up in the ditch. And
Right.
as we started getting into the forensic information related to that train wreck, started to realize they had a background check vendor that was cutting corners, or they had a
Right.
background check vendor that didn't understand the changes in the law and weren't giving the church the actual information the church needed. So we finally got fed up and decided to do it ourselves, knowing that we could do it correctly. Now, in a background check, now understand, we don't serve any restaurants, construction companies, shipping
Right.
companies. We are a group of subject matter experts designed to understand what is the risk of the church and solve that problem, with the biggest risk being sexual abuse. That's the mission killer. So
Right.
we've got a team of people that are trained to understand sexual abuse as a criminal event, how those records are created, how they're searched, where all the breakdowns are, what are the different laws out there that are going to shape the ways in which information can be limited, and design a background check with a focus of serving churches and child serving organizations. That's all we do, and we do it very, very well. And also understanding what are those grooming offenses? What are those offenses that may not look like it's telling you there's a problem, but showing people these are the things you need to have your eyes open for, and also trying to help our churches and child serving organizations be better customers to understand what are those high risk offenses when you get one. So it's a background check system which is shaped specifically for the church with a high focus on sexual abuse risk to make sure that we don't put our vulnerable in harm's way.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, I think when I started learning a few years ago about how you guys did it, so because we had background checks built in from another company, and it was very automated, it was very quick, it was very cheap, it was very simple. But as I began to learn the process that our current provider, how they did it, and then I started to learn how you did it, I'm like, it's not even close. Like you can automate a background check, and and as you well know, things slip through. And what I love, and I want to tell the audience today and our awesome customers, is that this is the best child safety protection that you can get. And we've looked at everything, and you can't beat the heart behind. I've been in Greg's office many times. There's 20 or 30 people on phones in front of computers, literally doing the work. So you can automate background checks and make them really cheap, or you can do it how Ministry Safe does it, and they're still very affordable. It's not like they're overly expensive, but they're just done the right way. And I think that's something that I want our audience to hear, that this is the best possible background check that you could possibly do to help to prevent any of this stuff going on. And so that's what kind of the initial, we were sitting together having lunch, and it was Kim. She starts explaining to me about this state and that county and this, sheriff's office and that county clerk, and all the things that you guys go through to make sure that this is a thorough screening. Absolutely phenomenal, Greg.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so what does this mean for our customers? Um, we kind of officially kicked off together at the start of the year, and we on our side, on the technical side, we built the background check, and we'll show you some screenshots here, straight into Breeze and our 3.0 CHMS, which are, if you watched our next events, those things are coming together. We still have customers on the 2.0 space, and you're being migrated on slowly. By the end of the year, everyone will be in 3.0. But we went ahead and, with our reach into the church, our 50,000 customers, your reach into your customers, it would just kind of a marriage made in heaven for us to come together and really kind of work together and provide our customers with the best possible tools to keep their mission going where they want it to go. And so, yeah, it's been a pretty quick integration. Like, these things they're not difficult. They just take a bit of time, but we put our foot on the gas and we said, we want MinistrySafe training and background checks baked into our software as quick as we could do it. And that's happened for a bunch of our customers. And so, what we want to do is make it so easy for you to do this that you do it. And, you can nickel and dime and save $10 here and there, or you can do the right thing and make sure that anyone who's working and volunteering, especially with children, goes through the appropriate background checks and does the training. And so it's fully integrated into Breeze and 3.0, and slowly but surely the rest of our customer bases are going to have access to MinistrySafe applications right within our app. So that's been the work on the last 6 months.
Yeah, but back up a couple slides, Dean, into that
Yes.
why MinistrySafe,
Yep.
because I want to just reflect on that last meeting that you and I were in together in Dallas, that you and I met with, that executive pastor, that very, very large church.
Yep.
And so when you were asking me questions before we got started on why MinistrySafe and Tithely, just when we met with that particular church, we had an hour with a
Right.
very important person who was very, very busy to talk about giving, background checks, child safety, a number of different things. But I remember looking back, we spent 30 minutes talking about worship, about smuggling Bibles into hostile countries, about giving, and about challenges the church is trying to overcome. I mean, we're 30 minutes into an hour-long meeting, and I started to get a little anxious that we're not going to have time to talk about what we went there for.
Right.
But then started to realize your mission is about healthy churches and serving them well. Our
Yep.
mission is about equipping churches so they can be healthy as it relates to vulnerable, and realize if we truly don't care about what God is doing and what the church's challenges are, then these things we talk about are just slogans. And I
Right.
was just really encouraged that that's one of the reasons why this relationship has been so important to us, is the leadership at Tithely, actually everybody I've met at Tithely truly does care what is happening in the local church, what the church needs, what are the challenges, what are the struggles, and how we as technology companies and subject matter experts can do the things necessary to solve those. So I just wanted to know, Gene, just in that meeting, it was a reminder to me that the why is the
Yep.
caring about the church, and that we share.
100%. And that was what attracted us. Like, we met, at a conference, and I think it was in Houston, which you didn't even want to be at, but we met. And just from day one, just hearing the mission and aligning with like-minded people that put God first and ministry first, and want to see the kingdom of God grow, knowing that, in a crazy world that we're living in, literally, it's insane out there. The church is a safe place, has to be a safe place. The church has to be a place of refuge and strength when people are going through things. And so that's our passion. When we met, like, you guys were as passionate or more about serving and caring for the church as us. And so it was a no-brainer for us to go work together. And we both kind of serve our customers, and we kind of join together. I think one of the motivators in our coming together was we want to protect more children. We want to serve more churches. And the combining of forces, even though you can go to the MinistrySafe website today and sign up, and hundreds of people do that every month, working together, having MinistrySafe baked into our software just made all the sense in the world, so we could go and extend our reach and protect more children.
Yeah, I just didn't want to quickly skip to the what without
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
reminding myself and telling other people about the why.
Yep.
This is about leveraging our technology, our skills, our people to accomplish something that really is unique. And I'm excited about it.
Amen. Amen. Okay. Let's have a little peek here. So it's very easy. And again, if you're a Breeze customer today or you've been migrated to 3.0, there is a button that allows you to activate background checks. And it's very simple to get set up within the MinistrySafe system. You'll see this is the sample of what it looks like, 1, 2, 3, 4. It takes, a couple of minutes, and then background checks and safety training is turned on, and then you just get after it. Okay. Just
Dean, you mentioned
maybe,
that this is in the Ministry Safe system. This
yep,
is Ministry Safe systems within the Tithely system.
exactly.
This is within Breeze. This is something that's already at the fingertips of some of the folks that are already, your guys are already serving.
Yeah, and background checks are getting run. We see it. Like it's been switched on for a couple of weeks, and it's already kind of ripping. So maybe just best practice, Greg, after people sign up and they get in, what should, our bookkeepers and our administrators who are, maybe our financial people who are inside of Breeze, pastoral care, what are the first few things they should be thinking about doing once they get in the system?
I kind of have a challenge there, and I know you're appreciating that challenge with me. Here are the things that the subject matter expert says you should do, but it always is going to collide with what is the reality of the boots on the sand, their administrative challenges, the ways in which they message to their people. And so, what we find when we go into most churches, that most churches are doing background checks, or they know what a background check is. They have some way, and sometimes it's limited to just employees. And here you'll hear the subject matter expert tell you, no, 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 it's employees and volunteers. In fact,
Right.
most of your risk is going to come from volunteers. So we just need to understand when I hit that reality of what I would like people to do and encounter them where they are, I recognize the church is already doing background checks. But what I tell you is, yes, keep doing the background checks. Use a good background check, us if you get the chance, but also train your people.
Right.
So when we've prioritized some of the things that we've done together, what we've done is like, I'd love for you to have all five safety system parts within Breeze, within 3.0, knowing that some of that is difficult in a CHMS. I mean, it's difficult for us, but what we've prioritized in this pathway that we want to make easy for the church is background checks. You're already using, do it here. And by the way, once you send the background check, while you're already assigning something for a volunteer or a staff member to do, go ahead and send them the training as well.
Right.
So if I had to encounter a church ministry leader and they say, hey, what should I be focused on now? There's more that I want to do, Greg, but what's step one and step two? Use the tool you're already accustomed to, your background check, add the training because that's what's going to give the people the eyes to see and the ears to hear the risk. And then I would tell you eventually get the tailored policies and procedures. And that kind of defines that pathway that you and I have talked about of, okay, we've got background checks in the system. We got the training in the system. We're working to unbundle that so somebody doesn't have to order the background check to order the training in that next step. And then there's also going to be a step to start making the documents at your fingertips. So
Right.
for right now, when I encounter the church, we're doing background checks. Good. Make a change. It's in your church management software. This is how you do it. It's easy. But when you do it, also train your people. It's also easy. So even on that next, you see that there's some trainings listed there. Okay,
Right.
so it's not just a one size fits all, but do know that one that's highlighted there is the sexual abuse awareness training. That's the key. That's the magic. That's the one that's going to teach you about the sexual abuser, the grooming process, common grooming behaviors, the importance of reporting, peer-to-peer sexual abuse. That's the main training I want to see you deploy.
And do you recommend that also, like obviously full-time staff, obviously anyone working with children, those are the people that should be doing the training?
Yeah, it's like anybody who wears your name tag is the better way to say
There
it.
you go.
But see that I got a lot of congregations that one of the byproducts of that sexual abuse awareness training is this common feedback. that, you know what, I think I'm equipped now to serve in this ministry and do it with confidence, but I realized that also made me a better parent. Can I
Wow.
forward this to my community group? Can I send this to my son-in-law? Can I? And so I see some churches and K through 12 schools and some camps that will also send that training to the parents of the campers, to the parents that have children in student ministry and in children's ministry, to the other folks that are stakeholders in a ministry, simply to make sure that the community's eyes are open, not just those people wearing a name tag. But your question was, at the church, when you start doing the next right thing, everyone who wears your name tag is somebody that a child or someone in your church would look at as somebody in a position of authority, whether you pay them or not.
Okay.
So everybody with a name tag gets the sexual abuse awareness training.
Yeah, amazing. You mentioned camps. We've just kind of come out of summer.
You turn it up.
And this is kind of an evergreen webinar, but VBS is huge, right? So those are like camps and vacation Bible school goes without saying that and a lot of those they're going to be mums volunteering to do VBS, but it's like critical in that setting that anyone involved in a kind of church camp setting or a vacation Bible school setting do the training and get background checked.
Yeah, isn't it interesting how the programs where we see the most fruit, the programs where we see the most impact are the places where sexual abuse risk is the most real. I mean,
Mhm.
you can just evaluate spiritual warfare factors on that one, but
Yep.
you're right. When you start to prepare to gather children in VBS, which is a very impactful program, that's where your risk is the highest, and that's why we're training about 250,000 people in those 2 months before VBS, camp programming in the summer, and a lot of the youth sport activity that take place in the summer. So it's a huge period in that April, May, where a
Yep.
lot of people are getting their folks trained.
Yep. Absolutely. Love it. Let's keep moving along here. So just a little visual here. If you're in 3.0 or you're in Breeze, here's what it looks like once you're in the people. Once you've logged in, you can activate the background check with that button. You'll see it. Not sure if Oprah is tithing to this particular church, but she should be. If you're if you're not in Breeze or 3.0, you can actually hit the QR code and go straight to a landing page within MinistrySafe World. The discounts are applied. The sign up discount is applied, and you'll get the same deal as all of our people who are today have it baked into the software. But if you want to go standalone, just hit up that QR code, and you'll be in the system at a discounted rate too. So um, that's it's really that easy. And if we go to the next slide, uh, actually the slide that shows that, just go back to the slide that shows the different background checks. Yeah, this one. So what happens essentially once you're in, you're going to choose. And I want to spend a moment, Greg, just talking about these different kind of plans, I guess, or these different kind of background checks. Just maybe spend a moment just on how they differ, what's best practice, which background check should churches use. Uh, like just talk a little bit to selecting the kind of background check that they should be starting off with.
Yeah, and again, there's a broader discussion with respect to creating a background check strategy, and to know there's different levels of searches depending on the type of populations you're serving or the intensity of relationship one of these staff members may have to be able to create trusted time alone. But you'll see it just goes from level one and grows in number.
Right.
And if you could imagine a background check is, rather than comparing an apple to an orange to a pear, a background check is like a fruit salad. Okay. It's like
Mhm.
it starts with a basic fruit cup, which is that level one. And it's going to involve the identity research, the National Criminal Database, and the Sex Offender Registry. That is the fundamental basic search. If you're doing anything less than that, I would tell you you are getting ready to get in harm's way. Okay. But see, with that being your basic search, and a lot of churches reach for that because of their budget. But see,
Mhm.
that level two is like a fruit cup with a motor vehicle record. So if you've got a need to transport people, you're going to need that motor vehicle record, the MVR. So the level two just adds the MVR. Now, level three, the reason why I've got that highlighted here, it's like that's what I want every church to be reaching for as its minimum. Because what that's going to add is not just the basic fruit cup, but it's going to add the county of residence. And the subject matter expert will tell you if the primary risk to the church is sexual abuse, the county record is king because that's where most sexual abuse crimes are prosecuted, which means that's where the records live. So it's making sure that we prioritize not just in that national criminal database, which is a good national cut of all of these records. We know that national criminal database is about 55% complete. Okay,
Mm.
so there's a lot of records missing, but it's a
Wow.
good basic search. But to add a county of residence, because see, why county of residence? Well, most people, when they're arrested, are arrested in the county in which they live. So if I got to choose one other place besides that national cut to gather information related to sexual abuse risk, county of residence is it, which is why that level three is what I want the churches to be reaching for. And of course, level four, level five, and there are other custom levels that can be created. Just add additional pieces of fruit, which are different areas of records that you can get. But that level three is the what I would call the baseline for the church.
Right.
If your budget permits only a level one, great, do it for now, but start preparing to make some changes.
And what is best practice around doing background checks on a regular basis going forward?
Yeah, and again, larger discussion, and we provide a lot of video instruction that can give you the larger discussion. But in terms of that rifle shot question, here are the principles I would want ministry leaders to take away. If all your budget permits is that level one, go do that and start getting people to give more money and start making changes. If you do have the budget to make changes, you know, you need to understand, try to avoid the one size fits all. I want you to evaluate your staff and recognize everybody wearing a name tag needs to have a background check, but not everybody wearing a name tag has the same ability based upon that name tag to create trusted time alone with a child. Okay, the person in the parking posse, the person at VBS that's handing out snacks to kids, you can do the lower level searches, but see people that are providing counseling to at-risk populations, student minister, children's minister, people about which you can't be wrong, you need to be able to step up and do a deeper search, whether that's a level three or the level four or five. So I tell you, create your tiers with the, okay, here are the people that have those abilities to create trusted time alone and intensive relationships, high trust relationships. Then here's everybody else. Possibly create different tiers of background checks and then be prepared to refresh them.
Right.
Okay. Run the background check every 2 years. Had so many churches that I've talked to, especially those in the ditch. You ran the background check 15 years ago when you hired him,
Right.
not realizing there was a lot of criminal activity that was taking place that you never knew about because you never refreshed the search. Okay, so refresh the search every 2 years. And I'm telling you what, step up and tell people you're going to refresh them every 2 years.
Right.
Let them know that if there is some type of a criminal activity, we're going to learn about it. And I'd go even further than that and tell them it's a requirement to wear a name tag here that you disclose to us affirmatively whether there's been any interaction with the criminal justice system. So as you can see, there's a lot that can be discussed, but the questions related to the background check is do different depths of searches based upon their role, periodically refresh them, and be prepared to make it an affirmative disclosure that they tell you if they encounter the criminal justice system.
Excellent. Love it. Okay, I'm sure I've got some questions, Haley. I've got Haley on, the wonderful Haley. How are you?
Absolutely. I'm doing well. This was so great. Thank you guys both for all that information. Super great to hear. One of our questions we have for you, Greg, is I am starting to learn that not all background checks providers are the same. What makes Ministry Safe background checks unique?
Yeah, and like we've already talked about how the different searches are different, but a lot of churches are starting to understand that it's not just this, it doesn't matter who I choose as my vendor. I just got to decide if someone's going to give it to me for $8 or $9, and that's my decision making, paradigm. And it's like people are starting to hear and understand that background check companies are in business. And if you've got these background check companies that want to simply make more money, but are in an industry like the church, that you can't just raise your price, the question then internally becomes, how can we cut costs? And we're watching background check vendors in the church marketplace decide, you know, we want to start cutting corners on what data we buy. In other words, if we don't have the data, then we don't have to hire people to review the data. So we can cut the costs on what we're purchasing and cut the costs on the employees that we hire. And the downstream impact of that is the background check company makes money, but the church is not getting the necessary information to understand who is at risk with their children and their vulnerable populations. So we're seeing, for example, how would there be a corner cut? Once again, you got to peek behind the curtain and understand more about the background check industry. All the background check industry is governed by federal law. It's called the FCRA, Fair Credit Reporting Act. And what the federal law says to every background check company is there's a balance between what information that could be provided and allowing a consumer to get a job. Okay? And here's the balance federally. As a background check provider, I can give you criminal convictions no matter how old they are. But if it's a non-conviction, I can only give you that information if it's under 7 years old. Okay, it's like a bankruptcy on your credit report. Like we're Americans, we need a do-over. Okay, so if you've had a bankruptcy after 7 years, guess what happens to that bankruptcy? It falls off your record. It's like giving you a do-over, if you will, which is a very dangerous principle bringing into the criminal record world. Okay, but that's just the federal law. Now, when the federal government made that framework, they handed the wand to the respective states and said, hey, you can make it more restrictive than that if you want, but you can't open it up any broader than that. Like California was the first one to take the wand and said, okay, well, that's way too open. So in California, here's the rules in California. Remember, here's the rules federally. In California, a background check provider, and I serve a lot of organizations in California, I can only give you convictions within 7 years. I can't give you non-convictions at all. Okay, what's the practical impact of somebody in California with a child? Okay, let's take Larry Nassar of USA Gymnastics. If Larry Nassar somehow magically paroled out of the Michigan prison system and wanted to work with little gymnasts in Texas with no additional state laws that restrict, we'll pop those records every day and twice on Sunday. If Larry Nassar goes to work with little gymnasts in California and you run his background check, guess what it will say? Say no records found.
Right.
Okay, why? He has no convictions after 2015. And so in California, in that law, you see it's so restrictive that there could be this horrific information, but California says, no, the balance that we have struck is that we want people to get jobs, even if it means this information can't be reported. Okay, that's bad enough as it is. But see, a number of states have taken the same type of pathway, and you got to watch which states are choosing what apertures, and they change a lot. So at MinistrySafe, we're sold out to understand what are all those changes, because our motto is we want to search every possible record given your parameter and return to you everything allowable by law. Okay, but see, the question I haven't answered yet is you asked me, what about some of these other vendors? You see, some of these vendors, to make this make sense for them monetarily, have want to create a one-size-fits-all search for everybody in the whole country.
And it's just all automated software doing the work.
All automated, right. And so you can't create a Texas-sized search and sell it in California because the law is different. So what they've done is the reverse, to the great disservice of the church, is to create a California search and sell it in Texas. So
Right.
7 years of convictions only in Texas, where that is not the limit, and then not telling the church about it, or putting it in language that the church doesn't understand. There are these arbitrary limits. And so, Haley, we're getting the calls from churches where it's like, well, we know that guy was arrested for possession of child pornography. We read about it in the paper. Everybody's talking about it. But when we ran his background check because he still wanted to work with VBS, it said no records found. We're gobsmacked. Well, this is the entity that was using us for training, but someone else for background checks. So when they called their provider, someone just ran the bunny around the tree and didn't give them a straight answer. When they called us, We said, let us show you, pull your contract, send yourself a training link, a background check link, and you know what it said? We're going to search this as if you're a California employee.
Right.
And their contract told them, we're going to limit all of our searches to 7 years. They just didn't know what it meant until they found themselves in the ditch.
Right.
And so
Wow.
different providers use different language to disclose that. But I'm here to tell you, it's hard to fight through some of that marketing language until you're in the ditch and someone like me is helping you.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, I would just add, and we had a couple of questions. We used another vendor previously, Checker, and yeah, that we are replacing Checker, with MinistrySafe as we, go down the pathway here. We just, it's when you know that you can do more to protect children and you don't do it. Like that was one of the things that hit me. We're sitting at lunch and I'm listening to you and Kim, and then I got convicted in the sense that I think we're just using something really like basic, and you explain the California thing and the 7 years, and sometimes you got to get to the county record and all these things. I'm like, I don't think our current provider's doing any of that. They're just automating it with software, probably doing the minimum, like you said. And I sat there going, there's no way I want to have that as my provider to our customers. I want them to have the best. And the fact that the best is still affordable, that costs about the same as these, other programs, is a bonus. I would have done it if it cost more, just because, and we'd make the case to our customers. No, 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 you don't want some cheap $7.50 background check that is, not going to do what you need. You want a thorough, best in class situation here to protect children. And that was one of the things that really kind of hit me, a couple of years ago as I got to learn and understand the whole area of background checks and safety training. So,
But see, this is Dean, this is how Tithely is unique. I've had that conversation with other leaders at church management softwares, and they'll look at me and just shake their head and go, well, that's just kind of sad because we're in a 5-year contract. Well,
right,
that's sad that now we know we're offering something janky to the church, but we get a higher cut. Or it's like
right,
to me, it's like when I hear your heart in response to that, it's like, okay, you're our people. Let's go serve the church. So
right.
thanks for that.
Yeah, that's a
Amen.
no
You
brainer.
guys have mentioned it a few times here, and this was one of the questions. Does Ministry Safe training comply with the new California laws?
Yeah, California is kind of the wild, wild west in legislation that's very, very difficult to adapt to. So we got a recent piece of legislation in California. It's called AB 506, where it made some requirements of what a training needs to provide. So in response to a lot of insurance carriers and other types of groups, I had to write a white paper and deliver instructions as to exactly what this law is requiring of you, and then went back into our system to create additional segments on the sexual abuse awareness training to provide that additional content required by the California law. So, short answer is yes, there is a specific California sexual abuse awareness training that complies with that new AB 506.
Great. Thank you so much. We also got a great question, which you have referenced a couple times in this, but I wanted a refresher on how often should someone refresh or renew a training or background check?
Yeah, my short answer to both of those is 2 years. Now, like with the folks that are in Gladewater, Texas, you have law in the state of Texas as it relates to the sexual abuse awareness training that requires it to be repeated every 24 months. So it's understanding what laws exist, and the highest standard of care bar in the country is still in Texas. So we've created that bar for everybody across the country and then made that additional training for California. Now, I've got a lot of my K through 12 schools they just said, no, we're going to train every year. A lot of my summer camps, no, we have too much turnover. They need to hear this again because they're all between 19 and 21 and their brains are very small. Let's keep training them year over year. But the typical answer I would give someone is do it at least every 2 years. Same with the background check.
Great. And if I had a question about reporting or an allegation, is there someone I could call?
Yeah, now that's probably the trickiest question because even when we put all the safety system elements in place, that doesn't keep you from having an allegation. That doesn't have keep you from having that situation that happened 10, 15 years ago of someone calling or a bad act that happens in a family that's being served by the church where they come to the church and report that, and then the church needs to know, what do we do with that? Do we have an obligation? So there's like a lot of different variables that could give rise to a question of, we just need to know what to do next. And we realize that us not doing, in other words, the next step we take is going to have consequences. And we need to make sure we do it correctly. And taking no step is going to have consequences. So that's why it's important to understand, if you got to understand, hey, we're still lawyers and we're still at this law firm called Love and Norris. And there's also this thing called MinistrySafe. The best way to see the distinction between the two of those is, imagine that MinistrySafe is Homeland Security and Love and Norris is like the 9/11 Commission. Okay, this is where there is crisis navigation, whereas MinistrySafe wants to help you never have another crisis. We've learned from the mistakes and we want to help you put those things in place and tell your parents all about it. So what we've set up at our office is people who need a legal consult. And that's what that would be. Questions that have legal implications, guidance related to reporting, which is governed by state law, or issues related to, what do we do next if it's a staff member? What are the things that we can say to our church family if we have this situation that arises? That person is going to contact, they're going to go to Love and Norris, and there's a button there for a legal consult. So where my wife and law partner is answering 5 to 6 of these a day. There is no fact pattern she hasn't heard. And some of the churches, all they need is 30 minutes to be able to understand, what is the law in my state? What is the next right step for me? Some people need the full hour and possibly need to, because all four wheels are off. But whether it's a small question or it's a large question, you can get those answers through a legal consult. And if you're a MinistrySafe member or connected to Tithely or Breeze, that comes at a discounted rate. So bonus, but
Right.
it's typically just for ministry clients. And so it's to help you navigate those crises, no matter how big or how small they are.
That's great. For
Awesome.
both of you, I had this really unique question that I thought was a great question to ask. It said, for people who you're getting background checks done for, is there a way they can make a donation to help pay for that background check? So this is a great way of where MinistrySafe and Tithely both come together.
Mhm.
Why don't you take that one, Dean?
Yeah, obviously we're pricing the training and background checks to the point where, obviously there's hard costs to doing these checks and there's people's time. And the differentiator, honestly, between Ministry Safe and others is people. You go to Ministry Safe office, you'll find 50 people sitting at desks doing this all day. And because you can automate with software like competitors do, or you can do the automation as much as you can, but then add the human element, which is absolutely in our minds critical. And so the first thing, if you're a church admin or leader, you've got a couple of hundred members, maybe there's 10 volunteers, to go and run like 10, $20 background checks for the peace of mind and running like an $8 training, once a year. Let's say you spend $500 a year with us protecting your children. To me, that is a no-brainer. Like it doesn't matter what your budget is. In the first instance, you should think, I'm going to spend this money because this is the right thing to do. Now, can you get the provider, the person who's doing the background check to pay the fee? Sure you can. But that's doable, but that's not the right question to ask. The right question to ask is, here's how many volunteers I have. Here's how many staff I have. Here are the trainings I want them to go through. Here are the background check levels that I'm going to do. Add that all up, and it's a few $100s. And so don't let money stop you from doing one of the most important things that you should be doing as a church leader, and that's protecting children.
Yeah, but I
That's
think
awesome.
Haley also, in answer to that question, if the question is, how can somebody who is a user say, hey, can I just add additional money to the cost of my background check just as a gift to the church? There's no way set up through Ministry Safe or even this integration that allows the people to just like add an extra $10. there are all kinds of ways to where you can ask and put in the code when you're a particular text number to be able to create ways in which to give independently of that. Now, I've
Cool.
had plenty of clients that say, hey, our people realize they've been blessed richly. They don't want our church to have to pay for this. Can we request you make the make the credit card swipe happen at the user side? Then that certainly does exist. These people can offer to pay for their own training and pay for their own background check. That code exists, but it's going to be a pre-calculated amount of money of what that training costs and that background check costs. It doesn't give them the opportunity to add a tip, if you will.
Mhm.
So I'm sure that Dean and Frank can talk about all kinds of ways that are easy ways to give independently of that, but not through the pathway of the training and the background checks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And look, if they're a customer of ours, the admin, all they have to do is send them the link to their giving form
Yeah.
that's in the back end of Tithely, and people can give to their heart's desire. So it's that we've made that very easy.
Absolutely. They also, a great question here is, I love hearing the best practices. Are there any resources or ways of learning and looking at this as a church plant? How to get started, policies and procedures as a church plant?
I love my church plants.
Yeah,
Okay.
great question.
But church plants, even though that's some of the more organic and healthy, back to back, we got to go do this type of environment. It's also probably where the risk may be the highest outside of foster care and some of these just high risk populations because most of my church plants, you're using a public school. You're using somebody else's building. You're
Right.
setting up on a Sunday morning before everybody's had coffee and you're breaking down once they're done. And so we've seen the risk unfold in church plants because of a lot of that lack of predictability, that repeatability of just having your own structure. Kindergartners go to the kindergarten room, and this is where you pick them up. So the church plant's also the perfect time to start introducing this. So when you start training your church plant, now everybody has eyes to see and ears to hear, so that when you're in these very organic, in these very unstructured environments and circumstances, everybody now has the eyes to understand and the challenge to understand how will somebody give it a go in our form of unstructure? How will somebody give it a go in the context of our particular, just introduction into an unusual space and time? So setting up the ministry safe system as a church plant is when it's the cheapest because that's when you're the smallest. Because I'll have a lot of plants ask me, well, how big should we be when we start finally taking this seriously?
Day
Like, are
one.
you kidding? This is the time to do it. And if you reach out to Ministry Safe, you'll find that we love, love, love our church plants. If there's any reason why cost is an issue, this is where you're going to see the shared heart for the church and knowing that church plants are a rich way to start something new where a community needs that. So, yes, Ministry Safe is appropriate. Do it. Do it then.
Yeah. I
Start taking down some of the uncertainties given the lack of structure and the organic nature of the startup, but reach out to us if cost becomes a barrier.
I would just add, as someone who's planted a few churches in my day, you're just grabbing bodies from anyone who wants to serve, and you're meeting new people every week. And a couple comes to the church and they just fall in love with, the plant, and maybe they're a friend of a friend, and but you don't know them. And that's the nature of church planting is you're just gathering strangers together under a vision. So I can't echo that, loudly enough for what Greg's saying. And I think it sends a phenomenal message. Like when you're a church planter and you've got someone who wants to volunteer and help children, you say, "Hey, we'd love you to volunteer. Hey, we have a policy in place where we do a background check and we ask you to do this training." If they flinch at that, that tells you everything. And if they're like questioning that, it's like it's almost like it's a test. And if you recoil against these practices, that's not good. So I think setting up these practices from the beginning in a church plant setting, it is absolutely critical. And I think you're doing obviously the church a really big service when you do that.
That's awesome. One of the other questions was asked is this available outside of the US?
Good
Is,
question.
is this available outside of what?
United
United
States.
States.
The answer to that is MinistrySafe is available on all continents in 15 different languages. Okay, we serve a lot of missions organizations, and one of them's like Mission Aviation. They just asked us to translate the training into Dari and Indonesian. I mean, it's like these are languages like awesome, let's do it. So we're being used internationally, but in terms of where Ministry Safe has its strength is typically in the US, Canada, and the UK, where there are set standards of care. There are set expectations that this is the risk and this is what you do about it. In a lot of countries, they don't have that type of structure. They don't have child abuse reporting hotlines. They don't have law enforcement dedicated to crimes against children. So, as much as we would love to be in some of those third world countries, in some of the countries in the Middle East and in Africa, the best we can do is translate and provide training into those environments. So for anybody who wants the Ministry Safe system, it's all fully translated into Spanish, and we're seeing a lot of it taking off in Mexico and Central America. Okay, so it's available, and we want to make it a bottom shelf reachable item, but then also the content is key. The training to us is what moves the needle, and we want that to be worldwide, and we're getting there.
That's amazing. One of the other questions as well was, what if you have a multi-county area? Is there a level that checks that maybe if they lived in different states, would it check all of those?
Okay, that's a background check question. And again, that level one is going to be the identity research, which is going to grab all that person's aliases, and it's going
Right.
to go into the National Criminal Database. Okay, and we
Amazing.
already established, and that's why they're asking the question. Okay, well, that's going to get a good hard cut of all counties. But then there's a question, if you really heard me, and they did, if we want to get the county of residence, I mean, anybody who works in Orange County, chances are they don't live there. They can't afford it. Or if they work at a church in San Diego, chances are they can't afford to live there. They live somewhere else and they drive. So you got truly two counties that are important, their county of residence and their county employment. We create special packages in that instance once we can identify the particular counties. Or if you've got multiple states, we've tried to help people create some strategies where, like the Kentucky and Tennessee side by side, there's a lot more openness in getting records in Tennessee than in Kentucky. And so we've had them make sure they're ordering their background checks from that state that will give them that aperture rather than the less open aperture. So there's a lot of strategy discussions, but the answer to that question I'll give you is an example of this big church in Dallas. They have people that live in 4 counties around their particular church, or their 4 campuses of their church. And rather than trying to which campus gets which person, because sometimes they'll come over to serve in a youth capacity in one of the other campuses, we want a one size fits all, but we want it to be comprehensive enough regardless of which campus you're in. So we designed a special search for this very large church that grabs all 4 counties around their church. Collin County, Denton County, Tarrant County, Dallas County. And so instead of a level 3, it's this custom that always runs those 4 counties. And we created a price based upon their volume. So there's a way to do it, but you see those levels that are available on the website are just the packages that we know 99% of the churches, they get what they need with those pre-created packages. But if you're in one of those circumstances where you need just a twist on that, that's when you reach out to my staff. We figure out what exactly your needs are, and we create a solution that best meets them, or at least let your eyes be wide open on what can be or can't be created for you.
You mean you get to
Amazing.
talk to a real person?
Real person. I got 50 of them. You choose one.
We like to differentiate ourselves against our competitors. It's we hear a lot of frustration on our side of the business here, on the giving and the CHMS, and it's like I can never get someone on the phone with this other vendor, and we're like, well, you can chew our ear off as much as you want. We're here to talk to you, and it's kind of a hallmark of who we are, and just another reason why we fit so well together.
That's amazing. Well, I think I'll go ahead and stop us there. If there were questions that weren't answered, we'll go ahead and collect those and send out an email from our staff to answer those. But I'll pass it over to you, Dean, to just wrap it up and say our goodbyes.
Yeah, great. I think we'll be sending everybody the link for the webinar. So if you couldn't make it, or you kind of had to bug out halfway, or you had staff that couldn't be on it, we'll get you that link. So that's that. And yeah, we're here to serve. We want to make sure that your church is in the best possible place, the safest possible place when it comes to doing ministry around children. And we're committed to that. And so, as I said, it's rolled out within a bunch of our products in Breeze in 3.0 by the end of the year. Well, I saw someone asking who's on our Elvanto product. You just use the QR code and you can get straight into MinistrySafe. Discounts are built in. We'll send that code out again if that's the way you're going to dive in there. All the Elvanto guys, you can go straight to get that code, and you'll sign into MinistrySafe, and away you go. So it's available to all of our customers, but as we roll out the integration, it's just going to get easier and easier. So, mate, I want to thank you, Mr. Love.
Good to see you. Come on back to Texas.
Yes, sir. You know I will. God bless everybody. Thank you for joining. And like I said, reach out with anything you need. We're always here to serve. God bless.
Thanks, everyone.